All right, so how to practice specifically shooting in this case. So I'm just going to continue to kind of do it in the background while I talk about some more of the specifics. So a couple things to keep in mind before we get into the meat and the potatoes, as they say. You want to have as consistent of a run up in these as possible. Your approach, you want to be very similar. When you're playing golf, anything along those lines, or like lining up for a free throw in basketball, or taking a PK in soccer, you don't want to wildly change up how you approach the ball every single time. That's just going to make you inconsistent. So there's enough shots here that we want to get some consistency in how we approach these balls. So for the most part, the most important thing comes down to getting the ball between your car and the net. So what I do on this shot is I go a little bit around it, cut into it, so that I'm hitting it with the corner, with this kind of the top right corner of my car, and trying to hit it towards the net. So I'm trying to get the ball lined up properly between my car and the goal. I'm just cheating a little bit to do it faster. It's totally okay to go all the way around it and do something like that. That's how you get consistent shots, putting the ball squarely between your car and the goal, and then just directing it in. So the lineup is super important. You want to keep that as consistent as possible, make it as easy on yourself as possible. So like here, notice how far I go around the ball to give myself a good angle. If I do this quicker, I'd go this way. But notice how I'm still getting towards the angle I want to take sooner rather than later. That's the setup. Setup is different for every single shot. Find the setup that works for you. But honestly, like most of the best setup, hopefully, if you think about it a little bit, should be relatively apparent. And I'll try and show the setup I do as we run through this. But obviously, the more important thing is actually shooting the ball. So yes, we need to get the ball between us and the goal, but how and where do we hit it? So we want to flip right before we hit the ball, as we talked about in our session. We also want to get underneath the ball. Technically, you can hit the ball flat just as hard as you can hit it into the air. So if I hit this flat, that's going to be as hard of a touch as if I do this. But the thing is that just how we perceive it, the higher the ball is, the harder it feels like it is to hit. So if I'm trying to actually shoot this, that's a really bad shot to keep it on the ground. But if I want to get a good shot, that one's not great, still lands on the ground, but the higher I get it, so that's good. The higher I get it, the harder it's going to feel like it got hit. So that's one thing we're going to be keeping in mind. It all comes down to where we hit the ball, exactly what part of the ball we hit. You also want to flip towards, I find like a really good way to think about it is just literally push the stick towards the net. So if I'm driving this way and I want to shoot the ball, I'm going to flip right and a little bit forward, which the car looks like this. So if I drive around it, flip right and forward, that's the direction I want to be hitting the ball. So just kind of flip towards the net. You want to get your nose around it so that your nose is able to do that without sacrificing power. Because if I'm like hitting it this way and I flip like that, it's not really going to do what I want. At least not hard. So I want to get around it and then guide my nose into it. That's one of the reasons why air roll control is important, because here I kind of like air roll away from it, so I can go like this, kind of point my car like this so I can flip into it better. That's pretty subtle. You don't even necessarily have to do that. It just kind of depends on your run up. The shot is very hard, by the way. It's not an easy one. But then just making sure to practice your timing and consistency and getting the power. You'll notice when the power is not enough. Here, I always want to hit the ball a minimum of 60 miles per hour, basically. That's going to be how I know that I got good, solid contact. That one's still kind of hard, so let's see. Nope. If I do that, that's probably going to be about 57, if I want to guess. Yeah, funnily enough, I got that exactly right. So I flipped way too early there, is what might be hard to notice, but I flipped super early. I'm going to go ahead and try and do it again. When I flip early, I can still get decent power, but I'm not getting that boost of power that I get from hitting it perfectly on the nose. If I get the timing right, though, every shot should be this like 60 plus mile per hour banger. Really good shots can get all the way upwards of like 73 miles per hour from a good angle. So that's kind of stuff you're aiming for. It's really nice if you get consistent enough with it to be able to place your shots exactly where you want them to go. So like on the easier shots, you want to shoot dead middle, then you want to hit bottom right, and then bottom left, and then top right, and then top left. But just getting these down until you can hit them consistently. What I'm going to always recommend is you want to hit each shot well 3 times in a row. What differs is what your definition of well is, of a good shot, what your definition of a good shot is. If you're not very comfortable with it, then a good shot is just anything that goes into the net. Do that 3 times in a row and move on. Eventually, you're going to get better at that. You're going to get more comfortable with your card controller. You're going to want to test yourself. Then you want to get it into the goal in the air 3 times in a row. Doesn't matter where, doesn't matter how hard, into the goal 3 times in a row in the air. Then after that, you might want to get it into the goal 3 times in a row while hitting it hard in the air. So that's going to be your like 65 plus mile per hour shots into the goal in the air. Then after that, you can try and place it 3 times in a row. That's really hard. Like if I try and hit any of these into the exact same part of the goal 3 times in a row, I'm going to struggle because I haven't done that enough. So if I'm going to go top left. See, that's bottom right. So there's one. Nope, screwed it up. So just kind of like run through it. I'm going to count that. It's a little bit off, but I'm going to put like a box in the top left. That one I'm not going to count because it's too low. I'm a little bit unfocused right now, trying to talk at the same time. So, but like just doing 3 shots in a row that are the quality you want, and then move on to the next. It's kind of like a really good way to base it. And so that kind of applies to everything. So if I wanted to go and jump into a different type of training, I can go into my double tap playground. This is obviously a much higher level mechanic. I want to be able to hit this in some shape or form. For me, my level is just get it into the net. Oops, as I messed it up. I just want to be able to get it into the net 3 times in a row. So I'm going to try and get a pretty consistent setup and then shoot it. So there's 2. Consistent setup, and I screwed it. So now I'm going to reset, and I'm going to try and do it 3 times in a row. So hopefully that's a pretty good guidance about how you want to practice this kind of stuff. It applies to basically everything. Do the exact same setup the exact same way 3 times in a row. And then when you actually want to really test it, throw it into normal training, because when you mess up your run up, when you change the situation, it makes it harder. So trying to do a double touch of any kind from from free play training is way more difficult than doing it in the training pack. So if I try and set one up here, then I can try and do this 2-3 times around, something along those lines. So hopefully that's helpful for testing or improving your mechanics and your consistency. Feel free to ask any questions. Best of luck.